Aidan tries not to let the thoughts show in his voice. It is, he says. When I'm lonely, I leave the radio on, she says. Maybe I will. You'll be fine. I can just feel it, she says emphatically, and he doesn't disagree. He can't bear to. His little moon in perpetual orbit of him, her father. Hundy P, he says softly. Aidan is outside the first Find Girl A meeting. It is in a warehouse near South Croydon Station next to a banner that says Christ Embassy, Croydon. It was dark when Aidan got on the overground train, his feet making impressions in the frost. Now, outside the warehouse, it's only just getting light. The sky a parchment colour, a sepia backdrop behind the buildings. Apparently, it's less suspicious meeting in the morning. He puts his phone in the front pocket of his rucksack. The burner phone is in the main section of the bag, deep inside, in an inner pocket that he made by ripping and sewing it himself. His hands are frozen, his fingers struggling to do his zip back up. The warehouse has Duper Distribution written along the top in amateur-looking bubble lettering. A few pallets are leaning against the wall, evidently unused, covered in splatters of November leaves. The silver roller shutter door is down, but a red door is ajar. The paint has become mottled in places, faded pink and bright red intermingled like a rash. He waits outside it, listening, hoping he's disguised enough, then lets himself in. His heart speeds up, his stomach curls into a tight knot. The first thing he sees inside the warehouse is a forklift truck abandoned in one corner. He walks past it and the unlabelled stock, wrapped in so much clear plastic it's opaque. At the back is a meeting room, and he can see from a small rectangular window that they're in there. A man in a brown beanie, a woman with long dark hair standing by the door. He pushes it open. The door sticks, then gives, and he almost falls in. "The final person," the man in the brown beanie says. He glances at Aidan, whose fingers instinctively reach to push his glasses up his nose, but he manages to stop himself. "Welcome," the man says. He extends his hand. "Brian." Aidan looks at him closely, then releases his hand in shock. The man heading up the vigilante justice group isn't a child. He isn't a football fan, a yob, an angry teenager. He is Luke's father. He was in the public gallery that day. He will almost certainly recognise Aidan. Panic rises up through him, a rushing sound in his ears like running water. "Nice to see you here," Brian says. He's short, with a dark beard and gold-framed old-fashioned glasses. "And you," Aidan says neutrally, trying to cover the shock on his face. He looks around him. It is more than just members only. Other than Brian, it is only footballers. A couple of lower-profile players, 2 people who are clearly coaches, their jackets say so, and the youth team, all 16 or 17, 30 or so young, strapping men. Aidan swallows. What the fuck is going on? He looks to the left of him. And there he is. Luke. God, Aidan has been a fool. He thought there would be more people here, that he would be able to hide in plain sight, not just this, a tiny core. "James is here to help us with IT," Brian says. Aidan turns his head immediately. He must become James Thomas. He works in South London. He's lived there all his life. An ex-wife, a kid, family around the corner. He practiced it on the way over, under his breath on the tube. He, too, has changed his identity for protection. "Where are the rest?" Aidan says. "The Fine Girl A group." "This is private business," Brian says, shutting the door behind them. "First, a warning." "Right," Aidan says, his mouth dry. You're here because of your brilliant scraper. Yes, yes, Aidan prattles. I can build as many as you want. To search for the mother, too. They can be designed to capture any new starters on all websites, which we can look through, too, if we can find out what she does for a living. Brian is holding a hand up, and Aidan stops. He's glad to stop talking about his wife in this way. Alan is also here, Brian says, gesturing to a man in a parka in the corner of the room, because of his access to a CCTV database. Okay, Aidan replies. If you talk about anything that goes on in here, Brian says to both of them, his tone icy, we will make your life a living hell. Aidan feels his jaw slacken in shock. Okay, Brian says. We wouldn't want that, would we? For the first time, Aidan notices Brian's muscles. Okay, he echoes, thinking only that something very bad is happening, something worse than he had first thought. Only he doesn't yet know what. Right, to business, Brian says. Luke shifts his weight against the desk he's leaning on. He looks uncomfortable, arms folded. The room is dimly lit, a single bulb in the centre of the ceiling. Some of the men are in the circle of light, but most, around the edges of the room, are in shadow, like a sinister congregation. The murderer, Luke, at the near centre. Luke was... Brian glances at his son. This time, 18 months ago, Luke was... Well, what were you? He addresses Luke directly. Fit, Luke barks. He still has his prisoner's pallor. His dark hair contrasts with it. About to sign for the Premier League team, Luke says bitterly, his lip curling up with the memory of it. Full of... I don't know. He drags a hand over his chin and mouth. Potential. Exactly, Brian says in a nurturing tone. Exactly, and then you defended yourself against a homeless man. Yes. And now what? Luke clears his throat. A year on remand, bad food, limited exercise, lost my touch. No clubs will take me on because of reputational damage. He brings his hands in front of him and clasps them together. The effect makes his shoulder muscles rise up. His eyes look dead. Right, Brian says, nodding. No wonder we're angry. And the sponsors pulled out, didn't they? The club's reputation has plummeted because 2 of their players went for a murder trial. It's true, Luke says. He shifts his weight on his feet. Yeah. So what are we going to do? Find her, Luke says. And then what? Petrol through the letterbox, Brian says. Aidan's stomach drops 50 floors in an elevator. Or worse, Luke sneers. Good, good. Brian is pacing. Yes, we'll find her. We will, Luke says. On to the crux of the issue. Brian sips his drink. Aidan watches the exchange. Terror courses through him. Brian walks the room like a caged lion, slow and sinister. Zara, girl A, Brian says, knows about ex nihilo nihil fit. Aidan's eyes are on Brian. Ex nihilo. Brian steps into the light. It glints off his glasses. The weekend after the trial, she met with a local homeless person, Anna. We had just discovered her identity, thanks to a stupid court usher. All we had to do was ask. Said we were a paralegal, needed the name of the list of witnesses, and there it was. The days line up. And then we followed her. Aidan stares, his gaze fixed. What? When? It slowly sinks in. That Sunday. That Sunday when she went out to see Jamie's friends. Anna told her that Holloway was connected to another homeless person's death. Bertha. 2 of our players urinated on Bertha for the initiation. She lashed out. They hit back and left her bleeding on the pavement. It was a game gone wrong is all. But Anna told Zara that when Bertha was urinated on, our slogan was shouted. And Zara can now connect us to it because they shouted it when they initiated with Jamie. She is the only person who can do this. She's smart, so she remembered it, used it in the court testimony. And she now knows it was shouted when Bertha died too. She knows. She knows about the initiations, and she knows about ex nihilo nihil fit. He finishes, having just shouted out Aidan's stepdaughter's death warrant. And Aidan sits there, winded, sweating, almost crying. Hazing. Jamie lashed out because of an initiation. He was provoked after all. The club have been doing this for years. And Zara knows it. That is the missing piece. That is what didn't make sense. This is why this group wants to harm his stepdaughter, destroy his family. This is why they want to find her. She has information. She is valuable. And she is vulnerable. Brian picks up a polystyrene cup of builder's tea and takes a sip. His fingers are holding it so tightly the polystyrene yields, little scored fingernail marks appearing. They're talking about next steps. For me, well, it's affected everyone. The mood at Holloway, I was there last night, and it's so sombre. Isn't it, Luke? He clicks his fingers. Look at me. Luke starts, glancing up at his father in the dim light. I was set for the Premier League. Now I'll be lucky to play again at all, he says obediently. Exactly, Brian says. His tone is off, almost mock-sad, a parody, like he is acting. He is riling the group up, trying to incite something. This is a speech. This is propaganda, Aidan finds himself thinking. I know, he says. He can't be a wallflower here, despite what he's just learnt. He can't just observe, watch and wait. He has to be tight with them, be involved, so that they tell him things, so that they don't suspect an informant. And then, when they find Lauren and Zara, he will find them too, and warn them. Aidan is putting the pieces together silently in his mind. That Sunday afternoon, when Zara was uncontactable. Shit. He adds it all up. The case was dismissed. She went to see a friend of Jamie, to apologise, to explain, maybe. That was when they told her about ex nihilo nihil fit. About another death connected to Holloway. Imagine if she'd been told before the trial. It might all have been different. She must have been too afraid to tell them. That she knew information that would make everything worse for their family because she is valuable now. She must have felt like it was all her fault for going to meet the second homeless person. She'll have been terrified. Another piece of the puzzle falls into place. Jamie apparently smelled of urine when Zara discovered him, and nobody had listened to her. They all told her it was how homeless people smelled. But it wasn't his urine. It was Luke's. Initiation. Hazing gone wrong. This is why the group was made private. Club only. It is no longer a viral group intent on justice. It is the opposite. A cover-up. The most important thing is to stop her talking, one of the players says, by whatever means necessary. Aidan stares at his trainers. He's got to ask what they intend to do, now that he knows what's really going on. So, when we find her, he says tentatively, rubbing a hand self-consciously over his face, glad he is standing in half-darkness. We silence her? Brian looks straight at Aidan. His gold glasses catch the light above. He turns his mouth down instead of answering. Aidan waits. Yeah. Make sure she stays quiet, he says eventually. Warn her off, Aidan prompts. And warn her not to tell anybody we warned her off, Brian adds. And if she doesn't listen? Brian raises his shoulders in a shrug, holding eye contact, saying no more. Aidan's heart is a hailstorm in his chest. If we hurt her, though, he says, then pauses. Won't that just make it all worse? An eye for an eye and all that. I don't need your input on my strategy, Brian says coldly. He turns away from Aidan. Aidan stares at the ground, blushing and thinking. The violence is worth the risk, because they'll all go down for this one, he guesses. Not just Luke and Mal, but every last one of them. So, Brian says to the rest of the group, changing the subject easily. She's likely been given a new identity. He shifts his weight against the table. Aidan moves slightly away from him, his bowels loose. He might be sick. He closes his eyes, sweat forming on his forehead. It's for the best. It's for the best. It's for the best. He's doing it for the right reasons. On the fucking taxpayer too, Brian adds. But the most important thing is, how are we going to find her? 6 degrees of separation, a young man who hasn't yet spoken says. He is tall, pale, and sinewy. Ash-coloured hair shorn close at the sides, longer on top. My cousin's wife is a police officer, he says, and she once said they always move people more than 300 miles away. Aidan's throat fizzes. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Information. This is what he is here for. He memorises it. There aren't many places to go other than the north, except maybe Cornwall. Otherwise, Yorkshire, Newcastle, Northumbria, Scotland. He will look at a map later. Great. That's a start, Brian says nicely. Anyone else for justice for my son? There is something frightening about his tone, an insistence to it. Aidan suddenly imagines meeting him as a real, true enemy and shudders. We'll get James's scraper going, somebody adds. Brian turns to Aidan. His eyes are blank, like a shark's, emotionless. Yes. How long until you find somebody matching the facial features? He says. For the photo I sent you? Not long, Aidan says, swallowing hard. His mind whirs over it. He needs to come up with false information, find a similar-looking girl. But then what? Lead them to her, an innocent girl? He almost starts to cry right there and then. This was a mistake. He hasn't thought it through. I wouldn't want you to take too long over it, Brian says softly. Aidan's entire body breaks out in goosebumps. She has a sister she left behind, Luke says. The tips of his fingers are nicotine-stained. A bright kind of bronze around the nails and across his index finger, which surprises Aidan. Not sure of her name. Aidan tries to manage his body language. The instinctive urge to question Luke, to correct him, step-sister, and to stop everyone asking about Poppy is physical, animalistic. I don't know why she didn't go either, Luke continues. He fiddles with the navy zip of his coat. But she's still here. They were local to Islington, otherwise Zara wouldn't have seen the hazing. So I guess that's where she is. Aidan shifts his weight on his feet. Good. They think Poppy lives in Islington. Good. She might be a good place to start. School children around Islington? She will have told her friends her sister's moved away, surely. Anyone have kids who go to school round there? Brian says. My sister's kids are in Holloway, the sinewy man says. Aidan looks at him, and he gives Aidan a slow, cruel smile. conspiratorial and sinister, his lips blood red. Aidan is trying to resist the urge to get out his phone and remind Poppy right away. Don't tell anybody anything. His poor baby. She'll have to confide in him and only him. How long for the scrapers to work, did you say? Brian says, turning to Aidan and looking at him. Aidan meets his gaze and feels exposed, naked. His disguise of a slow-growing beard and losing his glasses seems so amateur. What was he thinking? He brings a hand to wipe at the sweat from his forehead. His fingers are trembling. He forms a fist and holds his hands by his sides. A couple of weeks. Maybe you could give us an update then. And then we'll pay you, he says. If you're the real deal. Aidan's mouth dries up so fast it feels like he's been burnt. He swallows, but his tongue sticks to the roof of his mouth, and he starts sweating again, water in all the wrong places. Sweat on his forehead, no saliva in his mouth. Tears always, always, always at the back of his eyes since they left. I'll check in with you. Next time, Brian says. He holds eye contact for a moment too long, then flashes a false, wolfish smile at Aidan. He jumps as the burner phone vibrates in his bag as he's walking to the overground. He stops to fish it out and sees Kevin, Brian, has messaged him. What date shall we agree you will get the scraper information by? The hairs on the back of Aidan's neck rise up. He is being managed. Brian's repeated questions are designed to spur Aidan into action. Give me a few weeks, Aidan writes, the longest period he can possibly stretch it out for. He exhales, his hot breath vaporizing in the frigid London atmosphere. As he's walking along the street to South Croydon Station, Aidan sees the sinewy man just up ahead. He's wearing skinny jeans, black boxers visible just above them. He pats the shin of his trousers with his right hand as he turns the corner. Aidan stares at the shape. Something long and thin sits in that pocket of his jeans, close to his skin. Something like a knife. When Aidan gets home, he Googles Bertha. She was a German homeless woman who bled to death 2 years ago. There were, according to a local news article, several wounds to her head. She'd been self-harming on her arms and had likely hit her head on something deliberately, the article says. But Aidan knows differently now. It's abuse. Hazing. Games played by the strong in an attempt to bait the weak. He feels sick. He looks into initiation and the case against Luke. There is a reason the murder took place on Luke's 17th birthday. That is the day he became eligible to sign for the Premier League club, and so that is the day of the initiation. It's their version of a celebration. And so the other murder must have taken place on another player's birthday. Next, he Googles the motto, Ex nihilo nihil fit. He pales as he reads it. It is a phrase only the elite would use. Ostensibly inspirational, but when applied to weak people, social outliers, it becomes sinister. Ex nihilo nihil fit. From nothing comes nothing. Aidan paces the living room. He is on the phone to 101. He has told them everything he knows. A very patient woman is repeating some of it back to him. So you believe your daughter, in witness protection, may know something about a wider conspiracy? She is saying. Yes, a series of attacks on homeless people, Aidan says, as part of Holloway FC's initiations. Eventually, she puts him through to a police officer. If your daughter is Girl A, then she is a discredited witness, the police officer, Daniel, says crisply. I followed the trial. Nobody would be interested in hearing more from her. In the nicest possible way, he adds. There won't be a second investigation. Your family should get on with their new... He clears his throat like he doesn't believe Aidan. Their new identities. But if she gave the police that information, they could all be arrested, Aidan says. They argue for a while longer until Aidan hangs up in frustration. He marches down the street with Bill, sweat moving down his back like a slithering river, dampening his t-shirt. He travels to his old local police station that he's walked past countless times in the city. He takes the tube to Moorgate, going with Bill down the back stairs instead of the escalators. It'll be his walk for the day with Bill, his city dog. He feels guilty about it. At this time, the morning rush hour, it is full of suits. A woman in baggy long trousers is eating a croissant. Miniature leaves of pastry landing on the lapels of her jacket. She's holding on to the red pole. Her nails are bitten. There is something of Natalie, his first wife, about her. The way her shoulders round as she stands there, her head dipped, short hair exposing her neck. He met Natalie in his late 20s at a tech event, when he was still 10 minutes late every morning, a cup of takeaway tea in hand. When he was young, before mortgages and kids. He had liked the idea of her more than the reality. He can see that now. When he was away from her, he would try to reason it through. No, she was super organised and made great tea, and she liked cool music, and he liked her laugh, a throaty, dirty laugh. She was perfectly normal. She liked guitar music and planning ahead. What was the issue again? But then he would see her, and she would say something unfunny, something slightly judgmental sounding, a joke about an Irishman, or something with a bawdy punchline about an ugly woman, and a very specific, sad and aching feeling would unbutton inside him, expelling a truth, something he knew but didn't want to. She was pregnant within 3 months. He had assumed she would be as regimented about contraception as she was about the order of the mugs in her cupboards. But she hadn't been. He'd been a typical man, an idiot. They'd married when Poppy was 4 months old, and they were both so tired, the floor felt like it was moving underneath them during the ceremony. They had divorced 8 months later, when, in the middle of the night, isn't it always the middle of the night? Aidan had finally listened to that voice. 4 years later, he had met Lauren at a wedding, who said to him across the dance floor, "I've only got one contact lens in, and it's wild!" And that was that. Something happy, instead of sad, opened up inside him. He wanted to marry her then. Life would be forever interesting, with her. The woman who put slices of Dairy Lee inside croissants and called it breakfast. It's raining when he emerges at Moorgate, and his hair is wet within seconds. Cold rainwater dribbles down his neck. Bill shivers and shakes it off. The buildings of London that he's grown up with his entire life seem imposing to Aidan this morning. He arrives at the police station a few minutes later. He ties Bill up outside. As he turns away from him, his heart wrenches. Their little guide dog. He's so good. He deserves a long walk in Hyde Park, not this. Rain drips off the end of Aidan's nose and onto the floor of the foyer, leaving clear ink blots on the concrete floor. The foyer is official in appearance, a government building. Paranoia creeps up the back of his neck. This thing they're in? It's bigger than all of them. They're out of their depth. Witness fucking protection. He shakes his head. It still seems unreal. Maybe he shouldn't be telling so many people that they're in protection. But no, these are police he is telling, for God's sake. He approaches a metal desk and introduces himself. He asks to see a police officer, but doesn't provide the reason why. He sits on a bench affixed to the wall for half an hour before somebody comes out. A woman in full police uniform. He tries not to look disappointed. He needs someone else, someone powerful. CID, plainclothes officers. She has black hair, dyed, he thinks. She's too young, mid-20s, if that. She introduces herself as Lottie, then leads him into a meeting room. It doesn't look like a usual police station. It looks corporate, metal, glass, angular. It gets shabbier the further in they get. Eventually, they reach a carpeted corridor with a meeting room just off it. She doesn't offer him a drink or invite him to tell her what's happened. She just takes a chair at the formica table with the peeling top. He can't help but pick at the corner of it. When he looks up, her eyes are on his fingers. He explains it all to her. Bertha, Jamie, the motto, how Zara connects it all. He sees a flicker of recognition when he says Girl A, but she hides it well. He sounds like a mad conspiracy theorist, but he isn't. He's the sanest, most clear-thinking he has ever been. He admits that they are in witness protection. He needs her to be on board first. Lottie listens better than Daniel from 101, but when he's finished, she says, I have to ask, sorry, do you have a crime reference number with us? Not yet, Aidan says. He likes that apology that tells him she doesn't go by the book. The man on 101 was no help, but please, will you be? He says. He says it to get her on side. What exactly are the nature of the threats? She says. She has curious eyes, a very pale blue. They're saying they will put petrol through her letterbox. And they're identifiable, the people? I can identify them. Is there any evidence? Have they said this in writing? I could get it, he says. She leaves a beat, a significant beat, then says, I see. Could you help me if I did? Lottie pauses. Maybe. Can you reopen the file into Bertha's death? It was December, 2 years ago. It's a cold case, maybe closed. They thought it was like misadventure, self-harm. It will coincide with one of the football players' 17th birthdays. I'm certain of it. There's your corroboration, he says excitedly. You've got an uphill struggle there, Lottie says thoughtfully. You've got a discredited witness. I know. And once a trial has collapsed, it is very tough to reopen it. The first killing has been deemed suicide, the second self-defense. And your stepdaughter is the only witness that this is not the case, that Bertha was murdered, that Jamie was provoked. Look, Aidan says, these people know they've moved. They're threatening all sorts. The Protection Service will be closely monitoring this. I'm afraid I shouldn't have let you believe I could help you. He can see a line of ashy roots at her parting. Lauren's hair colour. The Protection Service will be monitoring the threat. But I don't know anyone there. I don't have a contact. Your wife will, she says firmly. But Aidan doesn't even know where his wife is. He looks up and can tell by her expression that there's no point pushing her further. She has moved away from the table, has her hands on the sides of the plastic chair, ready to go. Right, Aidan says. How will I know, though, that they're okay? They will have it in hand, she says, standing up. You need to trust them. Can I just, if I monitor it, can I just have a contact here? Someone to call if... He expects to receive the usual spiel. Dial 999 for a threat to life, or 101 to report a crime. She stops and looks at him properly. It's my family, he says. I'm so fucking scared I'm going to lose my family. He says it barely above a whisper in the cold corporate lighting. Something in Lottie's expression changes. I know, she says softly. You're too young for kids, Aidan says. But trust me, it changes everything. I have 2 twin babies, just off maternity leave, Lottie says. You're young. Got pregnant too early in my career, everyone thinks, she says. Her expression becomes neutral again as she looks at him. She knows she's revealed too much. But Aidan likes that. This is what he wants. Never too soon to start a family, he says. Best years of your life. Lottie rubs at her face, and he sees the tiredness now. A subtle layer of makeup under her eyes. Maybe so, she says. I'd certainly do anything for them. Exactly, Aidan says. Here, she says, seemingly spontaneously, passing a card to him taken from a box on a shelf in the meeting room. Aidan takes it. Should I call if it escalates? Lottie is still standing, waiting to go. Yes. Look. Focus on the now, on what they intend to do to your family. That is what we'll be able to get them on most easily. Those shits. Aidan appreciates the returned swear word. A collaboration of language. They're on the same side. For now, Aidan looks at her. Okay, what if I kept an eye on the group and passed you the information? Lottie blinks slowly, staring at him thoughtfully. There is a hesitation, something she is not saying to him. I could never advise that you do that, she says quietly. But she holds eye contact for just a second longer than is necessary. He collects Bill and walks home. On their way, Aidan texts Poppy to remind her to keep quiet. After, he replays Lottie's parting words over and over in his mind. I could never advise you to do that. But who's to stop him? He's got nothing to lose. He's lost everything. Chapter 23. Poppy. Battersea, London. 2 days gone. Poppy has broken up her family. That is what she is thinking as she pulls her school tights on in the darkness of the morning. Dawn is just beginning outside her window, grey and colourless, and she is thinking of the way her father used to look at Lauren. He never looked at her mother that way, not that Poppy can remember, anyway. Eyes crinkled up, head tilted as he watched her. And now Lauren's gone. They've gone. And if Poppy had made a different decision, she would have gone too. Suddenly she wishes she was asked properly, not out of the blue in her kitchen. This morning, the reasons why she stayed, her mother, this house, her school, all seem tainted, loaded, like she has to enjoy them twice the amount because of what they have cost her father. She finds her school skirt and pulls it on, then her shirt. The clothes are cold against her skin. She sits on the side of her bed in the semi-darkness and sips her strawberry tea. She has a new Teasmade, and it's brilliant. The tea was there waiting for her this morning when her alarm went off. The cup is warm in her hands, and the steam mists her nose as she sips and thinks. But it's too late. It's all done. They've gone, and now her father is alone. She looks at the dawn beyond her window. The first tube rattles by. Where are her stepsister and stepmother now? Out there. Somewhere in the wilderness. Poppy has boarded the tube and is currently wondering if her hairstyle is ill-advised. She would be able to tell from Zara's facial expression what suited her and what didn't. Poppy would emerge onto the landing wearing a pair of peg trousers, and Zara's brow would crinkle. Just a few days after the murder, Poppy was at her dad's for the weekend and dithering between 2 pairs of trainers when Zara appeared at her bedroom doorway. One hand on the frame, one on the door handle, eyebrows raised. Poppy gestured to the pillow at the top of the bed, and Zara sat there cross-legged, watching her get ready, poised to offer up opinions. Poppy looked at her in the mirror as she redid her mascara. Zara was so pretty. She didn't know it, but she was. Never pale or spotty or tired-looking. The arch of her bare feet, her slender arms clasped around her knees. It was all elegance with Zara, like a ballerina. She didn't have to try at all. Poppy looked at herself, bags under her eyes. She was beginning to look old, she was sure of it, and it had happened basically since her mum's illness had progressed. Immediately, tears started in the back of her throat. She looked back at Zara, who was staring straight at her in the glass. "Sorry," Poppy said. "I was thinking about my mum." "Oh," Zara said immediately, her eyebrows drawing together. What about her?" Poppy spun around to look properly at Zara, and sat down heavily next to her. "Do you know if multiple sclerosis is hereditary?" she said. "Wow," Zara said, swallowing. She laced her fingers in with her toes, which Poppy found vaguely disgusting, and looked down. "Shall I do a danger Google for you?" she said. "A danger?" Poppy asked. "When you Google something scary for someone." "I wish I had someone to do it for me." "Okay," Poppy said, smiling gratefully. Outside, early September, a couple of yellow leaves were clinging on by just a thread or two against the bright blue sky. Zara typed away, then started reading. "MS is not an inherited disease," she said. Poppy's shoulders sagged. She trusted Zara. She was so smart. She'd have gone to a reputable website, read a conclusion of a peer-reviewed study, probably. Why are you worried? Do you think you've got it?" "No," Poppy said. "It's not that." Zara said nothing, waiting. Even though she wasn't her dad's child, Poppy was sure she got that from him. The loaded pause. He was good at that. "I wouldn't want any child of mine to be my carer," Poppy said, and the tears came properly this time. It's so shit at times. I made her a packed lunch for today because I didn't think she could make a sandwich." "Is she in a relapse?" Zara whispered, her eyes round and surprised looking. "She's always in a relapse. And I'm snappy, and I'm like a fucking grumpy old woman all the time. I'm so fucking angry with the whole thing." Zara said nothing, gazing at Poppy. "Are you trying to decide between those?" she said, pointing at the two pairs of trainers at the foot of Poppy's mirror. Poppy liked the seamless way they shifted topic, the way only family can, from the serious to the mundane, their boundaries as open as the bathroom doors they never locked. "Yeah," she said. "Definitely the white. The others look so 90s. "That's the point." Zara laughed softly. Poppy sat on the bed next to her. "You're so good for caring for your mum," Zara said. And then she added, in a way that was intended to look like an afterthought, but Poppy knew wasn't, "A nicer person than me." "Thank you," Poppy said. "And it isn't fair. It shouldn't have happened. Your mum should let you get a carer. My mum said she won't." "I know," Poppy said. She shrugged. "But carers are an admission, apparently." "Well, I think you're a hero," Zara said. And that had helped. It didn't solve the situation or the fire of anger that still burned in Poppy, but it did help. They sat in silence for a few minutes. "You're a way better person than me," Zara said again. "Why'd you say that?" Zara paused, and then she said it. "I lied." She looked up at Poppy. Those lads. The homeless man. What? Jamie went after them. Oh, Poppy said, her mouth forming a perfect O that she hoped, even though she should be thinking of more important things, made her plain face look momentarily beautiful. You know what, though? Zara said in the quiet of Poppy's bedroom. What? Poppy said warily, not knowing what to do with what she had just been told. I think he just felt so vulnerable, lying there. Two lads looming over him. I'm sure he got up to defend himself. He was covered in his own urine. Wet himself in fear, I guess. Oh, that's heartbreaking, Poppy said, thinking of the one and only time her mother had done the same. Just a few feet from the toilet, the flies of her jeans undone, her bladder not able to last the distance. Poppy had helped her, and they'd ignored it all afternoon. In the evening, Poppy had said, You know, you used to help me too, when I was small. It's no different. Her mum had smiled, but Poppy thought the joke had been too painful for her mother just then, and her cheeks had heated up later when she had relived it. She was so insensitive. Yeah, but I still lied, Zara said, her face resting on her knee. Do you know what? Poppy said. Fuck it. Yeah? Like you say, you know you're right, don't you? They're thugs, whatever the sequence of events was. Yeah, Zara said, smiling, finally. As she left Poppy's room later, her walk was more buoyant somehow. Poppy was glad she'd lifted her up a bit. Her beautiful stepsister could be so insecure, so worried all the time. Today, getting the tube into school, standing on the Victoria line at rush hour, nails still wet from a hasty paint, coral, this morning, Poppy's wondering what Zara would make of her Heidi braids, plaits that go right across her head. And she's wondering if she had told her father that Zara had lied, whether they would have avoided all this. And so she is also thinking that it is mostly her fault. She gets off at Green Park. Her friend, Emily, is waiting at the top of the steps. It's a bright autumn day, and Emily's bare legs are in a slice of sun, the rest of her in shadow. Concern is written across her brow, which comes into focus as Poppy mounts the stairs. Emily has dark hair, with baby hair at the temples that she once tried disastrously to shave off. She smells of lemon shower gel, though she swears she doesn't use it. It must just be her mum's fabric conditioner. Emily's mother is a mother who has the energy and mental space to care about fabric conditioner. Nice nails, Emily says. It's an unspoken rule of their friendship. Compliments. No jealousy. No dragging someone when you feel bad about yourself, just raising someone up and trying to say the same things to yourself. Thanks, still wet, Poppy says. She touches her index finger lightly. The polish yields, viscous and not yet set, like putty. She's left part of her fingerprint behind in it. Damn, she always checks too soon. Were you okay yesterday? Emily says. Where were you? I was just sick, Poppy says. That's her story and she's sticking to it. Vomiting thing, 24 hours. Horrible. My mum had that, Emily exclaims. Usually, Poppy enjoys her friend's enthusiasm to discuss all things with zeal, as they recently learnt in English class, but not today. Today, there is a sick, sad snake curled up in her stomach, and it is all she can do to get through the day without disturbing it. Poppy looks down at her feet as they walk. She has on new pink Stan Smiths. She will have to take them off the second she is inside the school gates, but they're worth carrying around all day for the joy she gets on this, her walk to school. She watches the salmon-pink laces bouncing as she walks, and breathes deeply, trying to calm the voice that says, repeatedly, that her stepmother and stepsister have disappeared, and that she can't even tell anybody. Everything happened so quickly. There was talk of witness protection, and then, like a rocket going off, It was actually happening, too fast and powerful for anybody to be able to stop it. Her eyes are wet, and she keeps them trained to the ground. "What's the matter?" Emily says. "Nothing," she says. "It's just the cold air." She tries to blink them away. "That's bullshit," Emily says. Poppy likes it when she swears so well. Exactly like an adult. The punctuation of it is perfect. Everyone except her dad would appreciate that. Only a few weeks ago he told her off so badly for swearing. "That sounds so crass coming from your mouth," he had said, raising his eyebrows to her over his iPad. "Didn't you swear as a teenager?" She'd said. "That's totally different." "Don't you swear now?" "That's also different." "Why?" She'd said to him, muting the television, ready for an argument. "Because I am not pure and sweet and kind," he had said. That had shut her up. "Shade thrown," she'd said. "You're cancelled," her dad replied, laughing. "Really," Poppy says now to Emily. "It's just cold." Emily's mouth parts just a little bit. She has on brick red matte lipstick. It's gorgeous. "Okay," she says with a shrug. And it's that simple understanding that does it. Emily knows Poppy is lying, but is respectful enough to not probe any further. Real tears come now for Poppy. They're hot and satisfying, and they spill down the sides of her nose. She's not a pretty crier, but she doesn't care, not in front of Emily. "Oh, no, no," Emily says. They stop in the crowded street while she puts her thumbs under Poppy's eyes, skimming the tears away while still more come. "I'm sorry. I'm exhausted," Poppy says. Emily stares at her, blue eyes concerned, still saying nothing. Commuters in suits, men with briefcases, women in heels, keep jostling them so they duck into an alley without really meaning to, like they've been moved seamlessly in by a tide. 2 industrial blue bins with black lids stand next to them. They smell hot and filthy. "God, sorry," Poppy says. Emily hands her a wet wipe from a packet, and Poppy gratefully uses it to swipe away her mascara. Black tears. She uses the camera of her iPhone to look. "Ever the image conscious?" her dad will mock. But she doesn't see it that way. Looking nice is self-care, as Instagram will tell you. It's as important to Poppy as food and drink and sleep and time with Netflix and showers and downtime. On bad days, like lately, it's a treat. Last year, when her mum's sight went, Poppy fell asleep thinking, "Tomorrow I will wear the full coverage MAC foundation with the hourglass blusher, the pale pink one. I'll do an English rose look." It had helped her. "Can I do anything?" Emily says. So simple, so supportive. There's no ego involved, no indignation that Poppy is choosing not to confide in her. Poppy clutches the baby wipe in her hand. It's warm and wet and comforting and leaves a greasy smear on her fingertips. "No," she says. "It's not even about me." She pushes her hair back. "It's so selfish of me to be upset about it." Emily's eyebrows draw together. "Is it about your mum?" "For once, no." "Dad?" Poppy raises her shoulders and drops them. It's not about her dad, not directly, anyway. It's about all of them. Lauren, Zara, her dad, Bill. Poppy's been browsing dog walkers on the internet. Her dad isn't walking Bill enough, and he's whining. She's hired one, and she'll tell him soon and make him pay them. He won't mind. He'll be thankful. She sighs out of her nose. The tears have stopped now, but nothing else has changed. "Well, whatever it is, remember, this too shall pass," Emily says. She opens her arms, and Poppy steps into them, head against the fur collar of Emily's parka. It's beautiful, from Barbara, and lets herself cry. "I hate this," Emily says. Whatever it is, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry it's happened to you. Poppy pulls back and, honestly, she doesn't even really think about it. She could say she does it because of the power of friendship, of unconditional love, of support, or because everybody has told her what not to say, but really, she does it because in that moment, it feels like the exact right thing to do. And Poppy trusts gut feelings. Zara and Lauren have gone into witness protection, she says, the words sounding implausible even to her. In the cool blue shadow of the alleyway, she sees the shock in Emily's eyes. She sees the whites of them, like a frightened dog's. Jesus, she says. What? Why? Is this about the trial? Poppy rubs at her forehead, baby wipe still in her hand. Of course she told Emily about the trial. What else was she supposed to do? Continue to suffer completely in silence through divorces, brain lesions, and murder trials? Yeah. Oh, Emily says, nodding quickly. Now there's this weird vendetta against her, and she's been taken into protection. She's literally moved out. Disappeared. Poppy makes a hopeless sort of gesture, hands rising by her sides, then falling again. Just like that. New name, everything. Oh my God, Emily says. Yes. Let's walk and talk, Emily says. They step out again into the low winter sunlight and walk down the high street. It's set to snow later today, apparently, but for now the sky's a bright blue dome above them. They've just gone, Poppy says softly. And I'm not supposed to be telling anyone. Nobody knew she was Girl A, but then this Facebook group, they just leaked her name, so she had to go. Emily nods. She steps past a big issue seller with a dog who she usually always pats, but this time ignores. They round a corner and cross a green in the shade from a cluster of tower blocks. Emily's face goes from a sunlit bronze to a dim greyish blue. When did they go? She says. 2 days ago. God. No vomiting bug yesterday then. No, Poppy says. No vomiting, but still as horrible. Dad wanted me to go too, and I wouldn't. Wow. I know. He just sprang it on me, and I said no because of the Art Foundation. I am a selfish twat. Oh, you're not at all, Emily says sincerely. I promise. They reach the school gates. I need to take this off, Emily says, gesturing to her lips. Mrs. Mitchell will go mad. She pauses. You've got my last baby wipe. Poppy smiles and passes it to Emily, who starts scrubbing. She wipes at the cinnamon colour, and it blurs and feathers around her lips. Will you never see them again? She says. I don't know. Poppy slips her trainers off and takes her sensible black school shoes out of her bag. That's what they say. I can't believe they've just gone. I know. Poppy has no idea what to say. She hears her phone go off and checks it. Her dad. Always worrying. This time reminding her again not to tell anyone. Shame and guilt flush her cheeks. I'm not supposed to be telling anyone, Poppy says obediently to Emily, as though the act of confessing will ward off the punishment. Don't worry, Emily says. And it does help. Poppy's shoulders relax. Emily balls up the baby wipe, its grease making her fingers look oily. I won't talk about it to anyone. They walk past a bin, and Emily tosses the wipe upwards. It is bright white against the blue sky, momentarily, a thick red smear at its centre, like a wound. Poppy blinks, and it's gone. Poppy likes it when it gets dark while she's still at school. They're coming into winter, and the snow has begun. Fat, infrequent flakes like cotton wool balls drift down outside. She rests her head in the palm of her hand and tunes out the fractions and the equations and the algebra. The moon is up, a reflective disk in the sky. The twilight clouds are shifting. their forms blurring with the classroom's reflection. Maths wall hangings and strip lights mingle with skies and street lamps. As she stares, she sees a form appear in the gloom. She blinks, thinking she's imagining it. But she isn't. A man is standing outside the classroom, his eyes only just visible above the windowsill, hands cupped around them, looking in, hardly noticeable at first until she concentrates on him, like a magic eye picture. She starts, chair scraping back noisily in the quiet classroom, and he ducks down. She looks around the classroom. Should she say something? No. She'll look mad, or worse, she'll have to reveal everything, who her family are, the vendetta against them, the things she's been warned and warned again to keep secret. She keeps watching, and he lopes across the school grounds, 1, 2, 3 steps, then runs. He has on baggy jeans, boxers visible above them, no coat, short greyish hair that catches the street light as he moves towards the road. And then he's gone. It was nothing, she tells herself. Some weird bloke just being nosy. Nothing. Later, at home, she drags the dustbin down the drive. Her mum isn't well. She got stressed about her dad, and the MS is worse again. The bin is wet with snow and bumps the back of her legs. It's completely dark, the air a wall of cold, the frost on the streets yellowed by the cast of the street lamps. She stands for a second, looking at the neat rows of bins. Without warning, the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. She looks around her. Nothing. As she turns back towards the house, she feels it again, and sprints up the driveway, her shoes wet and slippery on the frost. She slams the front door behind her, out of breath. It's only later, after stacking the dishwasher, her mum in bed, that she sees it. Her front door handle, moving down. She blinks, staring. Has somebody just tried the door? Surely not, she thinks, her heart racing. No. Chapter 24. Lauren. Coniston, the Lake District. 2 days gone. It's the evening of their second day in the Lake District. Lauren's second day as Lindsay, Zara's second day as Sienna. The sun sets earlier here, up north, just a couple of minutes. It's weird to think of herself in darkness and Aidan still in light. The washing machine beeps, signalling it's done, and she jumps. She double-checks the doors and windows are locked and takes the laundry up to the landing where the Era is. Zara appears and starts to help her hang it out. She would never usually help with this, but, like a holiday, witness protection has rejigged their routine. Her always tanned arms, with their fine blonde hairs, stretch to hang up a white t-shirt. She straightens it carefully, and Lauren watches, remembering hanging up all of Zara's sleep suits before she was born. She bought them from Marks and Spencer, even though she couldn't afford to, and washed them all while she was pregnant, her belly nudging the edge of the Era so it teetered.